He took over a relatively small family business at the dawn of the 1980s, and he was just 26 years old at the time. Having lost his father, staring at a building with no machinery in it, he rolled up his sleeves and did what he does best. He built a sprawling enterprise that is now a leader in the two-wheeler space in India.
The grandson of T.V. Sundaram Iyengar, who founded the TVS Group in 1911. It was a humble bus service company then. T.V. Sundaram Iyengar's son, T.S. Srinivasan, would dream of setting up a factory to make mopeds. But it was the third generation, Venu Srinivasan, who would make that dream come true, turning the bus company around to a global conglomerate making two-wheelers for the world. Venu Srinivasan studied in Chennai and then in Purdue in America. When he returned home, all that was left was his father's dream. From the turbulent 1980s to the resurgent early 2000s, Venu Srinivasan battled all odds to make TVS Motor a household name. The stylish Samurai, the iconic Apache, and every woman's best friend, the Scooty. To buying out the Norton, a respected British brand, Venu Srinivasan's success story is like none others. A Padma Shri awardee in 2010, Venu Srinivasan works with MSMEs to help improve quality levels and take Indian manufacturing to global standards.
With me is the Chairman Emeritus of the 1.3 lakh crore rupees worth TVS Motor, Mr. Venu Srinivasan. Mr. Srinivasan, thank you so much for joining us on NDTV Profit.
Thank you, Sandhya.
It's very rare to speak with you. So let me begin by asking you about some broader trends in the country and in the economy as such. As someone who has seen the license Raj era and then you've seen the post-liberalization years, how do you see the current state of the Indian economy?
Well, between the license Raj and today, it's day and night difference. India is substantially a free market. Still, there are some regulatory bottlenecks to be overcome. Most of the regulatory bottlenecks are actually at the state level because land, water, pollution control, electricity, most of the things that a factory needs are actually regulated at the state level. And that different states have different levels of progress. Some states are doing very well, Some states are doing very well. And those are progressing, clearly attracting more investments than other states, one being Tamil Nadu, where I come from. But for a country as a whole to progress, we need to get all the states on board to have a common minimum program of liberalization of permissions to start factories, manage labor. So that I think is very important.
What are the roadblocks you see in this?
Roadblocks is red tape. There's a vested interest in maintaining red tape because obviously it provides opportunities for rent seeking. And the states which clearly see the advantages of creating employment and creating a satisfied electorate base, those states are going forward with deregulation and they are thriving. But there are many states which are yet to catch the winds of progress.
Well, that's a fair point. Now, let me come to your industry, the two-wheeler industry. Well, or let me call it, as I was very clearly told before, the mobility industry. I believe it's not called automotive any longer. So, in the mobility industry, two-wheelers are doing reasonably well as far as the numbers are concerned, sales numbers are concerned. But passenger vehicles and commercial vehicles especially are staring at a slump even during the festive season. So what do these trends tell you?
I think in the last couple of quarters, we have seen a slowdown in the economy. We have maintained a very tight leash on interest rates in order to control inflation, which I think was the right thing to do. And but having said that, there is a global slowdown. It's not as if India has slowed down and other countries are doing better. Globally, other than America, every country has slowed down. And in that context, India is doing quite well. But not well enough to meet the aspirations of the young people who are coming into the job market. So that is our challenge. And that will be the challenge for the new Reserve Bank governor as well.
I'm going to come back to this point about youngsters and jobs a little later. But staying with the, the auto industry, electric vehicles, especially four-wheelers, have not done as well as expected, despite the government giving a big push for it. And even state governments have given, various incentives, tax stops. Do you think the future remains EV, or is it hybrid, CNG, or something else altogether?
See, first, I think EVs were hyped up as if it was a panacea and it would solve all problems. The truth is that EV infrastructure has to keep pace. And let me come to cars versus two-wheelers. In the case of two-wheelers, you can charge it at home overnight. The usage of two-wheelers is about 30 kilometers a day. Overnight charge can get you about 90 kilometers of range. So there's no range anxiety and there's no problem. In the case of a car, it is very difficult to charge it from the plug point in your house. You've got to have specific charging stations, which most apartments don't have, and no public infrastructure is available. Therefore, across the world, in Europe, North America, the EVs had great expectations. Billions and billions of dollars were spent on batteries and EV factories. And now they're finding that all the companies are slowing down, whether it be GM, Ford, Volkswagen, everybody. And but I think in the long term, EVs will come back, infrastructure will come. It may not happen in 2030, it may happen in 2040. I think 2030 was too aggressive a deadline, and European countries were giving up their competitive advantage in IC engines and transmissions, which they're way ahead of the world. And they're going to lose hundreds of thousands of jobs. Now, when the reality strikes, I'm sure the same green environment group in Europe will suddenly find that there's a backlash.
So, are you saying that if you're saying that EV is not the panacea that it was originally thought to be, so what is the panacea then? If it's not going
There's
to be
no
petrol?
panacea. So you have to have a progression. You have to have an orderly migration. You start using CNG, which is already a cleaner fuel. You go to CNG and hybrid, that makes it even cleaner. Then you go to electric. And as I said, it will happen. Electric will happen. Whether it happens in 2030 or 40 is all I'm questioning. That we should not have had these deadlines that Europe decided that by 2030 they'll make only electric cars. I think they will lose competitiveness, they will lose jobs and create internal crisis in those countries.
That sounds pretty frightening, and again it comes back to the jobs point, which we will come back to a little later. But if you look at all of the trends, the data points that have come in over the last couple of quarters, and you did very clearly say that the last 2 quarters have seen a slowdown. So, do you think the India consumption story is over? Is the COVID, post-COVID consumption, that whole story is over, or do you think this is just a blip on the radar?
No, the Indian consumption story is not over by a long shot. We may have a slight dip because the world has slowed down. But as long as the Indian population is growing and the government supports growth, I think you will see growth coming back in the next couple of quarters. And I'm sure Reserve Bank will see a easement on rates the next MPC meeting. So I think the story will come back. India's story is intact. It's a long-term story. So we have to look at it over 10 years and not over 2 quarters.
Okay, so India is a long-term story, point taken. Now let's talk about the global economy, Mr. Srinivasan. You said the US economy is not slowing down, but a lot of people are of the opinion that now with the new government coming in, Donald Trump's, a threat of tariffs, his promise of tax cuts, that the US is likely to go into an inflationary situation. Now, do you think that's going to happen, and what do you think the impact will be on India and pretty much the rest of the world?
I think it is too early to predict what actually the new government will do. Of course, Mr. Trump has made many comments about what he will do. But once he is in power, he will be responsible for growth, but also keeping inflation down because inflation will hurt his electorate base. Inflation is like high blood pressure. You can withstand it for a short while, but in the long term, it will hurt the economy. So I'm sure while he has made very drastic threats, he will take some action to protect American manufacturing and bring manufacturing back to America. And that will mean maybe a little bit of pain on inflation, but I think America needs to take that because they've exported all their jobs. And that is why you're having such a backlash from society.
And we're going to suffer as a result of those policies, do you think? India.
There may be a little pain, but there always has to be a little pain for some gain.
Let's do a little bit of a flashback, as all of our best Tamil movies have. Now, you lost your father when you were very young, and I read that you were standing outside a building which had a moped manufacturing facility, which was his dream, but the equipment had not come in, and it was just in the project stage. So, what was running through your mind at that time?
Well, actually, it was on the day of the Griha Pravesham, where the factory puja was done on an empty building, that sadly and tragically I lost my father. I was a project manager and suddenly was made the managing director. What was going on by time? I think, frankly, I was numb to the loss of my father. And so I think you did things intuitively, instinctively, without as much thought. But the only thought in my mind was to make that moped business come true. I think there was no other thought. While I had my air brake business, which provided sustenance and stability, the challenge on my hand was to make the moped business come to life and realize my father's dream.
And that dream has been realized, and how? So, well, this was back in the 1980s, and that was a very difficult time for Indian industry. And you being in Tamil Nadu especially would have been plagued with factory shutdowns due to the frequent worker strikes that used to take place. And you did something quite radical back then. Why don't you tell us about that?
First, disagree that we have plagued. Tamil Nadu has had its share of labor issues, but it has been definitely one of the best states in terms of labor relations. So, A, that's not, I don't agree with that statement. B, TVS has had very few strikes in our history. There are only 2 strikes in our history. And basically, we believe that the company is held in trust for all stakeholders. And the first stakeholder in the company is the employees, because they depend and their families depend on the success of the company. And therefore, they are the first stakeholders. Next only comes customers, and then comes society, then comes shareholders. That has been the philosophy of TPS.
All right. Let me come to the Samurai, the iconic Samurai, which you partnered with Suzuki for. There was a change, a shift in the whole industry at that time from 2-stroke to 4-stroke engines. And I wanted to ask you how you dealt with that 4-stroke revolution which you were, faced with. Was that a challenge for you? How did you overcome it?
2-stroke to 4-stroke is a challenge like 4-stroke to electric, maybe. And it was a very major challenge because 4 strokes are inherently significantly more efficient. But 2 strokes had the advantage of being very simple and easy to use and maintain. So the balance was slowly shifting after the oil crisis in 1990s, after the Iraq war, when India came to a halt and we lost all our foreign exchange. There were no petrol available. There were queues and lines outside petrol pumps. That's when really became a crisis. And the 4-stroke started taking off. So we responded to it by moving to 4 strokes with TVS Victor in 2000. But we continued to grow from 93 to 2000 on the back of Scooty, on the back of Samurai, on the back of our mopeds. So we did grow, but clearly there were a lot of pressure from government regulations, from society, from environmentalists to shift to a more uh, carbon neutral, or I wouldn't say carbon neutral, less carbon spewing two-wheelers. And so we shifted to four-stroke in the 2000s. And it had its own challenges because the service of four-strokes are very different. Both our customers, our dealer mechanics, roadside mechanics had to understand the differences, start servicing them differently. So it took about 7 or 8 years for TVS Motor to successfully make the transition. So we did have a fair amount of stress between, I say, 2003 and 2010. But then we got our mojo back, and then in 2010 to 2024 has been a good run for the company. And we produced some excellent products. And the whole focus was based on a single minded focus on customer delight and on zero defect. And we've been recognized by JD Power, the international standard for customer satisfaction, as having the highest customer satisfaction of all bikes. So we did manage that challenge successfully.
Well, I'm pretty sure, at least in Tamil Nadu, where I come from too, everyone has a TVS bike of one variety or other. In fact, I own a Scooty Pep. So I wanted to ask you about one very interesting interview of yours that I watched on YouTube, where you described the spiritual impact on you by Puttaparthi Sai Baba. In that, you had said that you were at an absolute low point in your life, professionally and personally, around 1993, because you said that the business was on the verge of collapse. Can you tell us what happened and how you fought back?
I don't want to speak too much about that. That's very personal.
I
But I
understand.
would like to speak generally.
Yes.
I think there are dark days when it seems an endless night in every journey, whether it is the material journey or the spiritual journey. And that night is crossed only by holding on to God and spirituality. Whatever be your religion, whether it is Ishvara or whether it is Christ or whether it's Allah, those who cross that dark night do it because of their firm faith in God till the sunrise next day, and what seems an endless night comes to an end.
That's very profound, and I think most of our viewers would probably agree with you as well. Now, let's get back to TVS Motor. So, what do you think are the top 3 innovations which have been done by TVS Motor under your leadership?
One is quality. I think a single-minded focus on quality to serve the customer. So, customer is the ultimate objective, and the way to serve him is by giving him the best quality, both in terms of product and service. What I think we lacked till 2000 when we struck out on our own after parting ways with Suzuki was styling. TVS is known for good engines, but not necessarily the most attractive bikes. And I think after 2010, we did correct that. And we came out with products which are not only good in performance, good in reliability and durability, but ultimately also very attractive to buy and own.
Okay, and let's shift gears once again. You've executed a non-compete agreement within your nuclear family of 4 members. It's a very unusual thing to do. And what prompted you to do this?
I didn't do it, the whole family did it. I think it's very incorrect because there are more than 20, 30 people who had to sign
Right.
and come together and agree. So it was a joint decision by the family coming together and deciding that we are becoming a very big family and it's better we have peaceful, negotiated separation. So each of them or each of us can go our own ways and try to fulfill our own ambitions.
But Mr. Srinivasan, you've also sort of split the responsibilities among the group within your, within your wife, your son, and your daughter. That's very
No,
rare.
that is not a correct statement, because
Okay.
my wife runs her family business,
Yes.
and so I think we will have our own. I don't want to talk about it. We will have, I'm sure, a peaceful arrangement as we go on, but that's too early in the day to talk about it. It may come years later.
All right. Fair enough. Now, of course, you do know that there are like multiple warring business families. They're in the courts. They're battling over inheritance, succession. What advice would you give them?
There are many families, or a few families, that are very successfully negotiated. And I think the importance in such negotiation is the elders in the family who provide the moral leadership and wisdom, and combination of outside advisors, maybe bankers or lawyers, chartered accountants. Typically, these are the people who are advisors to family businesses, coming together and letting good sense prevail and to work out an arrangement. I don't think family businesses last forever. All good things must come to an end at some point. It may be 100 years, it may be 60 years, 40 years, I don't know. But the patriarch or the elders must then decide that it is time, when we are having good relationships, that we make arrangements for the future.
Now, I'm going to ask you about the legend, Mr. Ratan Tata. You are on the board of Tata Trust and also on the board of Tata Sons as a representative of Tata Trust. What was your equation with Mr. Ratan Tata? Would you share some anecdotes with our viewers?
No, that's again something I never spoken about and probably will not say much about. All I can say, it was a great privilege and honor and good fortune to be associated with a giant. He was a man with the power of mind and the goodness of heart. He touched the lives of millions of people, both through Tata's companies, which employed people, which served customers well, looked after shareholders well, but at the same time, through Tata Trust, where millions of people's lives were improved with medical care, nutrition, rural development. I think it was a very unusual man who comes once in a century, who has both qualities of heart and mind.
And my last question to you, sir, on the subject of next generation, your son Sudarshan and your daughter Lakshmi, what would you say are their strengths?
No, I would not speak about that. I think each of them are individuals. They have their individual strengths. And I'm sure both of them will do exceedingly well, given their intellect and their personal strengths.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Srinivasan. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you. Thank you for your time. And
Thank you.
Wish you all the very best for the future.
Thank you very much.
Well, that's a wrap on Profit Insights. Stay tuned to NDTV Profit for more news and updates.